Hey everybody, I'm here with a very special guest, friend and colleague, Danny Tawiah, who has a long trajectory in that field. He has been Senior Vice President of Innovation in Nike, Senior Digital Brand Director of Global Digital Brand in Nike, Senior Digital Brand Lead of Global Football, which I'm most impressed. And he shaped the evolution of the Nike's digital global ecosystem for a long time through its double-digit growth. He was also in charge of some of the biggest global activations for what I'm really impressed by, the 2010 FIFA World Cup in South Africa, the 2012 Olympics in London, and the 2014 FIFA World Cup in Brazil. So a long trajectory on the digital innovation is Nike. Nike is also a leader there. And today, Daniel, as most of us, has been learning, who's been in this digital game for a long time, he's been learning about the blockchain a lot, which many say is the future of the digital age. And so I invited him. We have a friendly relationship, and he talks a lot about the blockchain, and he's much more eloquent and much more knowledgeable than I am. So I invited him to talk to us today about the metaverse and some of its characteristics. So Daniel, I leave it with you. Please go ahead and take the floor.
Yeah, no, thank you, man. It's great to be here. And thank you all for, I want to thank you in advance for listening to me. It's probably best to thank the audience. I'm going to share my screen really quickly. And so the metaverse and NFTs, two things. Think of the metaverse as the environment, the spaces that you're going to go into, right? LA, New York, Chicago, these are all different cities that you can transport yourself to. The metaverse is very much like that. And then think of NFTs as the things that you own that will stay with you and be transferred with you as you move from each of these cities. And the determining factor of what you own. If I own a gigantic diamond, right, in New York, and I took that gigantic diamond to Chicago, I could sell that gigantic diamond and transfer the value back to me in monetary terms. That's what NFTs are, is the ability for you to take your digital owned assets with you from one location to the other, in this case, the metaverse. So I like to give that context just to help people understand the relationship between the two, because they work hand in hand, but you really sort of have to understand the relationship between them in order to take full advantage. So that's the metaverse and NFTs. And really it's built on three very, very important principles. One is community, because, as we've said, the whole metaverse is a universe unto itself. And so it's governed by a different set of rules, and those rules are usually anti-establishment, pro-decentralized, and it's usually a community that it sort of self-governs itself. So a community is a huge part of how you become successful in the space. And then the culture that powers that community. What are your principles that power ultimately the community that you've created? And then finally, commerce. And commerce really just means ownership, things that you own in these spaces, and how those things and the relationship between those things and your peers and that interaction happens. So think of these things as sort of the sort of trifecta, if you will, of metaverse, NFT, community, culture, and commerce as the elements you need for sort of what the future of innovation, the metaverse, NFTs will tend to look like. All right, so super famous quote that I love because I think it helps ground people in the from to. A great descriptor, I believe, of what 2.0 is really this idea that platforms drive culture, right? You look at Instagram, Facebook, these are all platforms that sort of tell you what innovation looks like, tell you what the feed should function like, and really drive you down a specific use path. Well, in 3.0, the voice is yours. You are the owner of and the owner of your own voice and your destiny. So the things you own will determine the type of experiences that you're going to have in those places, very similar to how the real world works today. If I have $10 in my pocket and $1 million in my pocket, granted, we can have similar experiences, but the $1 million is probably going to give me levels of access that perhaps I may not have if I only had $10. So the same can
access to a different platform, yeah.
100%. A lot of ways to leverage ownership in 3.0. So the challenge is, I'd say 6 to 12 months now is that, with all the things that we've seen around crypto and just amazing use cases, it's really hard for brands and you and I to keep up, right?
Yeah.
It's almost the influx of information is ridiculously long. But it's also telling that there is something very, very exciting here in this space, because the use cases continue to become more complex, more sophisticated, and they continue to prove that the innovation long-term is going to be better for society as a whole, and allow all of us to be part of the economic system. So the opportunity is there, and it's huge, and it's almost impossible for anyone, including brands, to ignore it. You hear a lot about acronyms, names, key things. I wanted to just highlight a few that are really important. These 4, I think, are critical. NFT, which we've all heard many a times, non-fungible token. And all that is really a cryptographic digital asset, right? And it means it's got very complex code associated to it that's encrypted. That makes it almost impossible for people to hack, and therefore a very, very viable solution for digital ownership in today's world.
Right, and that's a very important point, right? So what that does, so fungible means, so for example, a dollar note is fungible. If I give you a dollar note or that dollar note or this other dollar note, it doesn't really matter. However, so what NFT would do is it would distinguish between all of these dollar notes. And if I really look close, they all look a little bit different, right? And it's like, no, this dollar note, exactly, that's non-fungible, or this piece, or like this picture, right? So that's the idea of being basically exchangeable. So it gives property to information. Right. Because it's a piece of code that's information. And that's actually a big one, right? So the agricultural revolution, after we went down the trees and went into the cave, and then we told all the indigenous, like, look, no, we give property to land. The indigenous didn't understand. We kind of like pushed that idea through in our civilization, but that gave property to land. Then in the Industrial Revolution, we gave property to knowledge, intellectual property. And now we give property to information. And it's like, sometimes I think, it's at that order of magnitude. It's a history-changing event. Yeah.
You're 100% right, Martin. I think to go one step further, that exchange of knowledge and information up to this point has been centralized. So your data is being siphoned by Facebook, and they're making billions of dollars off of our data, right? 3.0 puts that information back into the hands of the owner. So you as an artist, you as a creator, you as a musician, provided you have an established community, don't need these systems any longer. You can go directly at scale to your entire community. That's a massive mind shift that I think we as a society are going to grapple with in the next decade, if not sooner. And you see it play out in NFTs quite a lot, right? And I think that the point you made is sort of, I tried to summarize it in 3 words down here, which is really just the notion of unique, verifiable, tradable. Like those are the 3 core attributes of an NFT. The same goes for Web 3.0. And Web 3.0, in the simplest form, is just a series of databases that are they're independent of each other, but cross-references each other to verify data. So, I tell people all the time, you can't switch off the internet, or you can't switch off blockchain. It's like guacamole, right? If these are all decentralized entities, then the information isn't being held on one at any given time. It's held on an array of machines. So your blockchain information is everywhere and nowhere. That's right. Which is a really interesting concept. And
that's why you cannot change it, right? So because it is there, it's everywhere. Exactly.
Right. That's right. In order to hack into it, you would have to physically hack into every one of those decentralized databases and change the string of code, which is dependent on the previous action. So if I change a code at any point in its interaction, the previous actions will deem an error and therefore voids the action. It's the most trustless, powerful, immutable system we've ever had as a society. And I think that we've yet to realize its full potential. Social tokens allow for access to certain digital spaces. You know, these tokens give you access to certain rooms in the metaverse, certain experiences. Think of it in the real world. It's the equivalent of going to I don't know, Comic-Con and having, a chance to meet the actual illustrator versus watching him on screen. Well, these tokens allow for those sort of real world behaviors to be translated into these digital
It's basically a piece of information, right? So it's like if I go whatever to a discotheque and they give me a little stamp, that gives me access to the discotheque, and even if I go out and in, I can go again. Or if I have a passport for this country, I can come in and out of this country. But it's basically a piece of information: the passport, the stamp. And so this is basically taking this kind of information. While an NFT is giving property to an image or to a song, here it gives property to kind of like access, which drives your point. I love that point, like how important culture is. That's I'm really thinking about.
Yeah, it's an interesting that I want to say both an opportunity, but also a fear of mine is how we as a human race translate culture. Because we all have different interpretations of it, but ultimately these digital experiences are going to be digital manifestations of our perceived notion of what culture is.
Of course, and we will have the VIP and the VIP of the VIP club, and we make sure that some of us are on top and some of us are on the bottom. That will surely be part of the game. Yeah,
right. Which is interesting when you consider decentralization is about equaling the level playing field. In other words, we've got to look out for human sort of interference in the experience as we go. The one here that I would highlight is, of course, your wallet, because your wallet has the same characteristics as the others, but it also has the ability for tradability. So I can actually buy and sell other digital objects, and the wallet will serve as my safe, for lack of a better term. The long term of that is that your wallet will become your driver's license to the world. You won't need a passport. All of your personal information will just be in a verified blockchain wallet that says, this is Martin, these are the attributes of Martin, and it's all verified and you can trust it to be true. So your wallet is a very important tool, and it's also the gateway. It's what allows the blockchain to be able to verify what you own. Right. So hence why you have to have your smart key put away. You lose that key, there is no way to open the door to be able to enter this wonderful world of the blockchain where all of your digital assets live.
And it's like right now, I mean, you walk around with your wallet, you have your money, and you have your credit card, you have your driver's license, you have everything. If you lose your wallet, I mean, it's tough,
right? Yeah. It's tough, except in the crypto, it's unforgiving. There's no coming back because they're redeemable. So yeah, you have to make sure you have it somewhere else to be triple safe. All right, so not to dwell on this, but I do think it's an important point, which is how does the blockchain work, right? And you hear the word blockchain. It's called blockchain because what you're looking at, these squares are effectively little blocks of data, and that data it's what's known as a smart contract. It's the agreement you and I have made that's contingent on that transaction to take place. Right? So I tell you, hey, I have this pen for sale, and you say, I want to buy this pen. I'm willing to buy this pen for $1. Well, we can make that transaction in the form of a smart contract that's embedded in a block. And that block will reference itself for every other subsequent decision that's made and encrypt it with cryptographic code, right? That makes it foolproof. Now, where it gets even more extensive is it's then duplicated on every person on the network's computer. So no one person has the entire truth. We all do, right? Which means I can now live in a world where I don't have to physically trust somebody in order to transact. It would be nice to be able to trust everyone I did business with. But blockchain smart contract encrypted means that whatever's been agreed is what will be actioned because it's been governed by code, right?
Yeah.
And that's a massive shift for people to sort of trust that code can do this. But I
want to point out two important things here. One thing you said is that what happened gets encrypted on the blockchain and then it gets stored decentralized. So that's where the term crypto comes from, right? Sure. Sometimes there's this misconception people have, like, oh, crypto is because it's encrypted, like, my social media WhatsApp communication, and I don't know what's talked about. No, if somebody takes Bitcoins out of a wallet, like, it's for everybody to see. Like, we don't know who the wallet belongs to. We might not know, but you can see that. But you cannot you cannot go back and change what happened. So the encryption is not that it's intransparent for illegal benefits or something. The encryption is that you cannot, and then additionally, it's stored decentrally, what you said, which is very important, because now if I could come in and could change the entire blockchain, then yes, then I could change what happened 2 blocks ago, and I would be able to change. It's very difficult. It's not impossible, but very difficult because it's decentral and it's encrypted. So I would have to break the code, go back, change everything. Not impossible. But then it's also, then it's on the blockchain, and therefore it will be the truth, in a sense that, like when I meet with my friends and then the story is like, yeah, you said that last Friday. My friend said, no, I didn't say that. And so we asked all the other friends, did he say that or not? It's like, yeah, everybody says, no, that's what he said. If the majority of people agree, that's what he said. It doesn't matter what he thinks. We all heard him say it. And that's just the truth then. The truth is what the majority takes as objective.
That's truth, exactly right. That's 100% right. Yeah. You're 100% right. And that's the beauty of it. Yeah. Because it means that you can live in a world where transactions can take place based on rules that are already predetermined. If this, then that. If, hey, I want to sell my house for $100. If you transfer $100 to this wallet, the deeds for this house will automatically be transferred into your wallet. That's in code. It's encrypted. It's on the blockchain. If I transact without knowing you, if I give you that amount of money based on that criteria, the following transaction item, the process will kick in, which is to transfer the deed. These are all pre-written and pre-approved by both parties.
Right. These are the smart contracts, right? That's why artists can also, that's why you said artists will own their art really for the first time, because now they had to record a song, put it on whatever, on a CD or whatever, and then give it to somebody distributes, and they will get the money. And now the artist just can record this one song live played in this wedding, and then sell this one time playing this song as an NFT to somebody directly. And the blockchain acts kind of like, the contract, the smart contract that executes, kind of like, sometimes I think about these smart contracts like a soda machine. So you go in and you give the soda machine like $1, and it says it still doesn't dispense the can because it says it's $1.20, it's $1.25. So I give it $2, and when that is hit, it gives me the can, and then it's already predetermined the change that it gives me. It first gives me quarter, and when it runs off quarter, it gives me dimes and nickels and whatever. But that's all predetermined, right? So I don't need any distributor, third party, whatever. It's just me, the soda, and the soda machine. And kind of like Ethereum or Cardano, they're like really awesome soda machines,
very complicated soda machines, but ultimately they're running if this and that transactions, right? If these things are met, then this is the outcome that should be actioned. It's all verified, so the code doesn't distinguish, it just actions it because those criteria are met. So it's a very, very simple but very complex way to verify ownership that we've never had before. So if you're a social media company, that's, if I'm an influencer for the first time, I can truly monetize me, the person, and all the things that I'm associated with. And I can go direct without the need for any centralized entity extracting value from me, or splitting the value with me. I can go direct. So it creates, I was reading an article that said if you have 1,000 hardcore fan base for whatever your art is, that's a built-in economy. You could effectively feed yourself for life by serving just these 1,000 people. So that changes the entire construct of how you build wealth or generate your income or sell to the world, or value, how you give value, which is, we could be here forever, but that's fundamentally.
No, thanks for bringing that up. It's very important to review how the blockchain. Cool.
Awesome. So that's the blocks. I often get, well, where does it live? And I always tell people it's already here. It's just the back-end system, just like HTML is the system for building web pages. Well, crypto is really just the layer that lives underneath. So you could be on a page like this, which is OpenSea, which is a blockchain-enabled Web 2.0 experience. And the only distinction that you'll see, two things. One is the top right-hand side, you've got the wallet icon, which is your wallet to access your crypto assets. And then the other is the actual, the currency, right? The actual, you know, how much things cost. You notice they're not in dollars. They're in Ethereum, I believe, or WETH, which is a cryptocurrency. So you quickly can see where a world where interacting with crypto has already begun, but we're slowly adopting it as a society. You know, 1 or 2 generations from now, my kids' generation for sure will not consider the dollar to be the only form of, you know, currency of exchange. They'll have an array of altcoins that they exchange in because it's part of their natural sort of, you know, evolution of, you know, their sort of their demographic, if you will.
Right.
Exciting times. That excites me a lot. Excuse me. So to touch on NFTs and the journey they've been on, it's still a very relatively new phenomenon. I mean, 2013 and 14 is when it sort of started out with sort of Hello Kitty, and that frog animation was out for a while. You had a few brands dabble in the space, namely, you know, Coca-Cola, Tate Modern in London, did some interesting expeditions. And then Topshop was sort of where it became big, where the NBA allowed individuals to buy highlights of actual NBA games, right? Quickly followed by Beeple's, you know, 15 years in the making, $69 million piece of digital art. That was really just a digital art, right? And then we've since then seen the success of Bored Apes and how incredibly expensive they've become and how coveted they've become, you know, and now they've become a sort of a symbol of cool in culture. All started out with a JPEG vectorized graphic. So it's an interesting sort of moment in the space, but you're starting to see the tech take the back seat and the cultural examples take the front seat. That's usually a sign that you can kind of see where things are going. That's usually where the trend follows. So it's exciting times for the NFT space, but most important thing here is all of these can be verified and owned by individuals, and they can prove it, right, through the blockchain.
Right. Which is very different than the Web 2.0, or like when the internet started. I just want to really point that out, how paradigm shifting this is, because at the beginning, one of the things like the economies of scale of digital products usually come from the fact that, you know, it can cost billions of dollars literally to develop a digital product, right? But then I can copy paste it as many times as I want, like a video game or a software or whatever I want, right? And or a song, and I can just copy paste it and just make money off it because there's these economies of scale. Whereas this paradigm reins it back in and says like, no, this one piece of art that was 15 years in the making, that's unique because we minted it unique. And this piece of art, you might copy it, same as there are copies of the Mona Lisa, but there's only one Mona Lisa, right? And even so, I have a picture of a Mona Lisa because I went, you know, to Paris and took a picture of it. Doesn't mean I own the Mona Lisa. I own a picture of the Mona Lisa, but that's not at all. The picture that I took while I walked through there is not at all the value of the Mona Lisa, right? So it is kind of like reining that back in. And as always, humans, we like to have property. So we give this property to this information, which is a paradigm shifting change.
It's massive. And, you know, even now you're seeing lots of different, this is a great slide because it still holds true, all the different use cases. You know, the PFP there is Jay-Z and Stephen Curry, like, you know, two of the most iconic, both in sport and culture.
The one on the top left, yeah.
Top left, blue, Stephen Curry's the blue 8. But, you know, they're willing to spend upwards of $250,000 just to acquire ownership of that graphic. Right, which is an interesting shift if you think about the amount of money we're talking about and what you're actually getting. So what are you actually buying? Well, clearly you're not buying just the solid bits of blue on this simplified gorilla. You're buying the idea of membership in a community
and it's not the image, it's the watermark behind the image, right? I can take a screenshot right now of that image, that blue ape, but it's not that. I won't have access like he has to all the different events, right? It's the water.
Right. Right. And that's the beauty of it. And every day, the everyday person, you and I can go in, if we have the financial means, we could buy a Bored Ape that puts us in the room with every other Bored Ape owner, including Stephen Curry and anybody else in that room that I perhaps may never get a chance to meet. Or the Bored Ape levels that playing field. It's just about ownership. And it can all be verified on the blockchain. Social tokens is another one, right? Which is access to certain rooms using your tokens or the amount of tokens as you have for richer experiences. It determines how your experiences play out based on ownership of certain tokens. The third one is this idea of Web3 to in real life. So buying physical, digital goods that have real life sort of outcomes. So in this case, 2 Chainz, you bought the NFT, you got a signed 2 Chainz basketball, right? There's been fashion examples where high-end couture have sold the 3D renders of the high-end couture and have sent you the high-end couture as a memento. I mean, that's a massive shift. This like beautifully handcrafted, couture dress that's worth millions is of no value. That's the nice thank you card. It comes with a nice thank you card. What you bought is the digital representation of that, right? Massive mind shift. So for artists, huge, of course, very visual, audio, visual. It's a massive, massive accelerator of the space. Metaverses, the ability to buy land within specific universes, and they're all NFTs. So you hear a lot about that, right? People are buying up real estate in virtual lands that have yet to be developed at the same value as real world land prices. So it's an interesting thing happening in the space. And then finally, the evolution, which is where does it go next? And you're starting to see it show up in different parts of society. The legal community are looking heavily into it because these smart contracts are immutable. So you can be very sophisticated with what's in them and be guaranteed that it's secured because it's decentralized. So it's definitely moving into lots of different areas of sort of society at large. But at the moment, it's absolutely driven by the arts and the music space, which I think is fantastic. You want to put the power back into the people's hands, right? So you've got guys like, Steve Aoki doing amazing work in the space. I think there's a whole range of rappers and different musicians that are beginning to explore. I think Snoop is probably one of the biggest players in the space currently, but exploring this space in a meaningful way and getting some really, really surprisingly strong results that question whether they even need a record label, right? So again, in the years to come, we're going to see some really interesting, evolved use cases of how these things are being applied. We talked a lot about, so that's the NFTs and the importance of them. The one thing that I call out, and pardon and apologies for this super simple slide, but it's actually a really important slide because nothing is recognized just like in the real world. If you don't mint a coin, then it's not considered a sovereign coin and therefore it's not recognized as legal tender. Well, the same is that of Bitcoin and crypto. You have to mint the things you own onto the blockchain, right? And usually that's where the mining fees kick in. And mining fees are really all the decentralized computers that it takes to process your encrypted ownership onto the blockchain. So minting is like opening your store or launching your website. Everything needs to be minted or the blockchain simply doesn't recognize it. We talked a little
but
about
it's not too difficult to mint something, because for example, I have some artist friends who kind of like, play the violin or play the guitar. And it's like, that was a really cool recording. It was a really unique recording because it happened, I don't know, at this wedding or something like that, right? With all of these people present. So, and then it could like an artist even, usually they're not famous for being very techy. So are there solutions nowadays already to mint it, or do you need to program in Python or something, or how do you?
Oh, it's becoming very, very easy and normalized now. And like all technology, there are consumer-facing solutions that are simplified, takes the tech out. That's starting to happen. So now applying a bank, getting a wallet is really easy now. It doesn't take a lot of technicalities. Buying NFTs, there's NFT marketplaces that look and feel like Amazon. I think the leap is understanding just the principles of how the tech all stacks together, and then you're able to navigate through it relatively quickly. But ultimately, the two key shifts is community first. You have to be of the community. You can't sell at them. That doesn't work. The old way of marketing doesn't work. You really have to embed yourself be part of the community in the most authentic way. That's what success looks like. And that community lives in couple of places: Twitter, Discord, Telegram.
All right.
that's the shift that's happening versus old traditional marketing where I'll just do a TV ad, I buy some radio ad, I buy some billboards, and I'm good to go. Well, you won't be very successful if that's your approach in crypto because it's a different mindset of that consumer. Very important. And as a brand guy, of course, I have to say that, right? That's sort of how we help brands make sure they're tackling the right issues.
Right.
But also,
so I'll play you this. I think this is a really important quote, and then we'll quickly try transfer over to Metaverse. But I think this video sums up really well sort of what's coming. So I'll just play it.
But also, it makes culture an investment.
Well, by the way, let's stop there right now. I just want to make sure everybody who's listening, your incredibly handsome, smart host here just said the only thing that actually matters. And it's the reason I'm so in. The purity of culture has been incredible because it wasn't economic between the end audience and the person. There was always something in between. But let there be no confusion. That statement was the most important. As much as I've been yapping, the tokenization of culture is exactly right. It's the only thing I've been thinking about the whole time.
I've looked at this whole crypto space. I've been in it since 2012. And all of it is less exciting than this tokenization of culture, the kind of NFT plus community stuff that's coming, plus the metaverse.
And it's going to be a big deal.
But also it makes culture an investment.
And I think, again, they touch on all the things we just talked about. It's community. It's like community. Ultimately, culture is different subsets of community having a like-minded perspective on something, right? Mm-hmm. And so community is sort of at the core of this. And then the ability to prove your ownership of the digital assets you own is another one. So from a brand's perspective, long-term is absolutely the right strategy. Treat it like a human being and nurture it that way versus ad hoc. Because in the end, what you do today will still be verified 10 years from now. So it changes strategically how you should apply yourself, and it forces you to have a much longer term vision on what the future is as it relates to your brand or your personal self. Very important shift. All right, so that's NFTs. So that's the things that the tools that powers the journey, and then think of this really as the destinations, right? And I always start this part of the presentation by just grounding people in sort of, how it's described on Wikipedia, right? Is this a futurist iteration of the internet made up of persistent shared 3D virtual spaces linked into a perceived virtual universe? All right, that's a bit of a mouthful, but it is fairly accurate. hard to wrap your head around it. But primarily what it's saying is that there's going to be something else other for you to be able to interact with that isn't of this world, is in the digital space, right? I think it's going to manifest in different ways. It's not necessarily going to be, exactly what you're seeing in this particular example, but you are always, just like you transfer yourself into a movie, we're in a metaverse right now, you and I, in Zoom. It just happens to be a metaverse with a population of 2, you and I. But the Zoom call could easily have your entire lecture class on the Zoom call interacting in this space. So the metaverse is really just a metaphor for these sort of central hubs of interaction where like-minded people come together to share their experiences on a decentralized platform, right?
All right.
So I hope that wasn't too confusing. But so that's the metaverse. We touched on this really quickly. So what's driving it, right? What's been driving it? Well, what's been driving it right now is really the shift in culture in terms of the cultural acceptance of things like Zoom, what we're doing now. And a lot of that was exacerbated by COVID. So you can indirectly thank COVID for driving the conversation. Of course, Meta, Facebook's announcement helped accelerate, but primarily we all discovered this new way of interacting because we were forced to, based on natural phenomena that were out of our control. So it accelerated it by 10 years, definitely. And as a result, we are now all very accepting of the word metaverse and all the things that, used to feel very futuristic less than 3-4 years ago. But what does it look like today, or at least during the COVID times. It's these games, and those of us that have brothers, sisters, kids, these were the games that were being played during the COVID times to pass away
and
time.
before ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why
versions.
I did kind of include myself. Yeah, Halo, right? And all these other games that we played. These are all digital metaverses that don't have any means of verifying ownership of assets within the game, right? They can also be reset. They're preloaded on a disk. I load the disk in. They have these defined parameters that I play in, and I can't go beyond those parameters. Well, in the metaverse, just like in the real world, I can have a never-ending sequence of experiences that's triggered by the things I own. And it can be forever. It can be infinite. Just like Minecraft, it's almost infinite in terms of things you can do in there. So we were already living a metaverse life, if you will, in some ways, right? Without necessarily thinking of it that way. But you can see it quickly evolving to the next phase of it, which is if you take the basics of what the gaming mechanics were providing you, and then you throw in this layer of ownership, you're now able to create these virtual spaces where people interact, share, trade, buy, collect, all within these virtual spaces, right? So you can see the trend and where it's moving to. It's moving from gaming into a real world, scenario where people are actually collecting these as a means of growing wealth, beyond just the enthusiast. And so then this is the early stages of some of these examples. And we expect it to be across the board. AR is going to be huge. The ability to just put a pair of glasses on, go to a city, and then have the glasses navigate you wherever you want to go without ever taking it. That's becoming a real thing. So the ability to jump from multiple devices is also going to make it ubiquitous for all of us. So our level of how deep we want to go will vary depending on our personal taste. And I won't dwell on this too much, but really what this slide is saying is that there are still some hurdles we have to cross in order to be able to realize the full potential of what we consider to be the metaverse. And that requires a lot of these things to evolve, hardware and computing, especially at the rates we're talking about, the network effect, so that when things jump from one place to another, there is no glitches or weird interactions. It's all seamless and it's easy. Virtual platforms are big enough at the scale we needed at in order to power all these experiences, interchangeable tools and standards, and so on and so forth. There's an array of different areas that will have to come together, but all of the things we just touched on are a step in that direction, and they continue to grow and develop and sharpen very quickly, which is exciting. So what does the future look like? Well, it's 6 things. One is it's persistent. Unlike today's world, I can switch off close my laptop and walk away and come back and pick up where I left off. Well, this world won't wait for you. It will continue to evolve, and it will when you rejoin it, it will pick up from whatever's happening in that moment, just like in the real world. We can't pause at this call and pick up exactly where we wanted tomorrow, right? We can try, but it will be tomorrow's version, not today's. So same thing is applicable here. Things will be live, just like in the real world, right? And so I can jump into these moments that are going to be special and unique and, of the moment and be part of that. There'll be physical, digital interactions of that. We're seeing that already in a lot of experiences. Pokemon Go is a good example of that. Self-contained economies, which they already kind of have in games. There's a lot of tokens that just don't necessarily have monetary value. But you can already see a world where self-contained economies are going to be baked into these worlds. And the one I'm personally super excited about is this idea of interoperability, the ability to take things I own from one part of one game to another.
And that's big, and I think that's where also cryptocurrency and NFTs then, really display their value, because it's not like you're in this game and you only have this value here. It becomes more like the real world. I can take something from this game and take it over to my work, and then from my work take it into the game. So it's becoming much closer to the real world than this artificial bubble where I cannot get out. Yeah.
That's
Thanks
right.
to the
I think that the real world analogy is probably the most accurate. It's mimicking all of the real world user behaviors and the outcome of those behaviors, but in a way that's verifiable.
Right, and that then also makes it, that will enable the transition. For now, many of these are games and it's all fun and games, but I mean, people start working in the metaverse, and like most of us who are information workers, I mean, it's not like I need to go and like, especially during, as you said, during the pandemic, we all started working at home, and that's just as fine, especially for us information workers. And it's not like the metaverse is not only fun and games, it's people are working there already and will work there more and more. And therefore, interoperability will be extremely important because the economy is migrating to that platform.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And just like, how we built up the information age to become the reputation age, we're going through that with the metaverse and NFTs. We're learning. So there's a lot of information and failure and success, temporary, long-term. There's going to be a lot of winners and losers, but every cycle of learning evolves us further. The word wallet isn't written, I remember Martin, you and I talking less than 6 months ago about some of this stuff, and it felt futuristic then, but now completely normal.
That's right. Yeah.
It's been less than 6 months since we talked about it. So I'm obviously it's exciting to see what the next 6 months looks like. But what I am confident in is that these 6 principles will still be consistent, regardless of how the technology evolves over the coming years, decades, etc. These are the things that will give it meaning, right? And certainly this is where all of the innovation is moving to. So again, I kept it, I'll stop so I can see your handsome face. I kept it relatively top line, but hopefully that helps.
That was awesome. Thank you very much. Like, there's so much more to talk about, and eventually also I hope to develop this content more, hopefully also with your help, because I'm learning a lot from you while you're not only talking, you're walking the talk, and to spread this a little bit more. And I thank you for your work to explain it, because there's a technology side, and I think there are also courses and important technological, and the coding is different on the blockchain, and that's important. And then there's the economical side, but then there's also, as I said, the cultural side, which actually drives all of this, and the social side. And thank you so much for your pioneering work in that field, and for taking the time to explaining it for us, because if you want it or not, we are already part of it, and getting much more into it.
We are. It's an absolute pleasure, and hopefully you find value in it. Of course, I'd be happy to do it again. Anytime you like, we can freestyle the next one, maybe, see what we end up with.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks.